everybody, welcome back to the Underwater Photography Show. I'm Matthew Sullivan.
And I'm Alex Mustard.
And we're going to do a little bit of a catch-up episode today. I know we've put out some episodes recently, but in between all of the past month and a half, Alex has been traveling. He moved. I had a cool day yesterday, so we're going to talk about that. I gave a presentation, so we're going to talk about that, and whatever else happens to come up. But I guess we're going to start with yesterday, because Alex you said you wanted to hear about it. So,
What, you finally got out on the water after all the storms?
Yeah, so that's the first time I've been in the water in probably a month and a half. About a month and a half. One of my good friends was down, and he likes all sorts of wildlife, and and he always does sharks whenever he comes down here. So we went out on the shark boat, and started out right outside the inlet. We had what is now being deemed a young blue whale right offshore, which
that is amazing.
As far as I know, does not happen in Florida.
Is that Jupiter Inlet or
Riviera Beach Inlet?
Okay.
Inlet. Yeah, so a bit further south. And we were on our way out to do sharks, and our captain whipped the boat around. It's like, what the hell is that? With more expletives, and it was immediately clear that whatever it was very big, and all of us pretty much said whale right away.
Wow.
And it was kind of acting weird. It was in very shallow water, and obviously they breathe air, so they have to come up to the surface. But the area it was in was anywhere from 20 to 50 feet, which for a blue whale is not deep. And it was kind of just doing circles, and it was doing them very close to the inlet, and it's a big inlet, so there's lots of boat traffic. So we just kind of kept our distance, but stayed with it so that we could, see if it would move past the inlet, then be okay. So it started moving south, and then all of a sudden it's moving back north again. So we called Florida Fish and Wildlife and told them that we had a whale offshore, didn't know what kind it was. For the life of us, we couldn't figure it out. We knew what it wasn't, but we couldn't figure out what it was. And I've seen blue whales off San Diego. Those are big blue whales, like the full 100-footers. So I wasn't thinking blue whale, and I've never heard of one being here. So there was that as well. But Florida Fish and Wildlife sent somebody out. They tracked it. It kept going south. And then between all of the videos that we all managed to get, they're not good videos, but they're videos. And we sent them to a bunch of whale people. And the consensus now seems to be that it was a young blue whale that was still probably 30, 35 feet long. So still a huge animal.
Oh, but young though.
Oh yeah, very young for sure.
Yeah, maybe it got separated from its mom or something.
There's that too. But either way, to be here is very odd because we get the very occasional humpback. There's sperm whale populations in the Caribbean that sometimes will get up into Florida. And 2 years ago, there was the northern right whale that came down here and gave birth, which was really, really cool as well. But to have a blue whale here, that doesn't happen. So if that's what it was, that's really, really unusual. So once the whole whale thing was done, we're already riding a high from that because we could have gone home from that just seeing a whale here. We went out to do the shark dive. We had lemons and bull sharks, and it started out pretty chill with just a couple of lemon sharks. And lemon sharks are fun. You've seen them. They're very in your face. They give you they have no respect for your personal space, which I enjoy. And as a photographer, the closer you can get them, the better. So we had lemon sharks, and then all of a sudden we had a bunch of bull sharks show up, and it got pretty wild. It's not often. I've never actually, in all the time I've done diving with sharks, working with sharks, we've never had to call a dive because it got a little bit hairy. But we called the one yesterday because it got a little spicy. And for some of the people who were there are not shark divers, so it wasn't necessarily the safest situation. So we pulled them out as soon as it got hairy, and then we headed back and we got to see a huge super pod of spotted dolphins on the way back, which is always a good idea. They were bow riding and everything.
Wow.
Right behind
you may not have been out much, but it sounds like everything was out for you when you did go out.
Yeah, it was a really cool day on the water. Got a couple pictures, got a couple nice shark pictures, and just a good group of people and fun to finally be out on the water. And now we're back to 50-mile-an-hour winds. Not even a hurricane this time. It's just crappy weather.
Yeah.
I don't mind the coolness. You can see I'm wearing a sweatshirt for the first time in like 6 months, but it's gray and super windy. So for at least the next week, we're probably blown out here.
Well, as you know, I moved house recently, since we last did any recording, really. And I've moved back to the southwest of England, to Devon, which is the county where all the rest of my family are, and where I grew up. But we're living in a different part of the county to the rest of the family. So Ellie and I we were happy to move down here, but wanted a fresh start in a place that neither of us really knew. So we're in a town called Budleigh Salterton, which is on the south coast of Devon and the east part of Devon. And yesterday I connected our water butt to the drain pipe, and it rained so much it's a third full already. But today it's wall to wall blue sky again, and I took Zeze for a walk on the beach this morning, because she didn't get to go out really at all yesterday because it was a waterfall outside the house all day. So it's very nice to be living within a mile of the sea again. I have to say, having lived in quite close to the middle of the country for quite a long time, it is wonderful to get out and just be able to see the sea. The sea in England at this time of year is quite brown around where I am, but at least it's the sea, so that's great. I wasn't tempted to go in.
Well, I was going to ask, is there any diving in your area that you can do?
So there is a dive that some people do in our town, which I don't know any photographer who's ever done, but I do want to reach out to a couple of the local divers and find out what they do. I suspect that it's probably quite nice at night at this time of year if you get a bit of non-rainy weather and you don't get bad viz, because you usually get quite a lot of stuff coming up in the sand in this time of year. But there's quite a big river near us, so it's not the cliffs are quite eroded all along this, or erode easily on this part of the coast, so it's very difficult to get clear water inshore. But there is plenty of diving within half an hour. So come, when I'm sorted out and I'm not just visiting IKEA and building stuff. There's probably even IKEA tools on my desk, but once I'm sorted out, I'll be definitely keen to get out there. But yes, since the other thing that stopped us recording for a little while is the fact that I've been off on my travels, and I ran a really, really enjoyable workshop trip in Indonesia, doing an extensive itinerary going from Komodo to Rinca to Flores and to Alor, and really enjoyed that diverse itinerary. My opinion, which this trip didn't change, of Indonesian liveaboards is the best thing that you can do in Indonesia on liveaboard is go to Raja Ampat. It's so diverse, so amazing. It's incredible. Always blows your mind. But if you've done Raja Ampat a lot, then it's worth doing the other trips because they do offer something different. And Komodo is very popular at this time of year. It's a while since I've been there, and it was shocking how busy it was. It really is full of tourists, full of boats. Great for Indonesia, great for the long-term prospects of the park because it's clearly bringing lots of money in. So all those things are important and good. But as a dive experience, it's not like it used to be. Certainly, that if you're in the northern part of Komodo, there's a lot of people everywhere. And in fact, a lot of the famous sites, the kind of the serious diving liveaboards tend to give them a wide berth now just because they're so busy.
Yeah.
We intentionally went on this trip with a desire to spend a good amount of time in the southern parts of Komodo and Rinca. That's because those areas are colder, that a lot of the boats don't go there. And also it's far enough away from Labuan Bajo, which is kind of the main port entry town, where the airport is for most of the tourists, that the day trips or the short liveaboards that a lot of the kind of the more touristy trips are doing, they don't tend to go down to the south because the people complain it's cold, the water's cold, and also it's a long way. So when we were down there, the two areas we spent time with in South Komodo and then in South Rinca we were the only boat there. So it was like the old days, and we were just 2 or 3 days didn't see another liveaboard. Right. So that was fabulous. And Horseshoe Bay, which is this horseshoe, unsurprisingly shaped bay at the south of Rinca, where you basically got the main island, and then you imagine someone's taken a bite out of it, but they've left an island in their mouthful, so you've kind of got this ring of water around. And that strait is got a number of well-known dive sites. The most famous and the best named one is Cannibal Rock, which I don't think is anywhere near as good as it used to be. I think it's had a bit of disruption, I presume, from fishing or something like that. And it wasn't as spectacular as it used to be as a dive site. But all the other dive sites in the area really produced, and it was really enjoyable down there. We then headed north and headed across the top of Flores, the long island of Flores, and did some diving there to break up the journey. It's not really a crossing trip, this one. I think every day we managed at least 3 dives. And I think almost every day we did 4 dives, actually. But I think on our travel day, we did just 3 dives. So it wasn't really compromised. And it was really, really enjoyable to dive there. I think as soon as you come out of the Komodo National Park, you do see the effect of fishing. And suddenly the very fishy reefs go. They're still very pretty reefs. There's still good macro. There's still lovely, clear, warm water. Very, very nice visibility throughout the whole trip. One thing I want to say about Komodo is how impressed I was by the hard corals as well up there. It's beautiful, beautiful hard corals in Komodo. I kind of always remembered, really, great currenty soft corals, and particularly the orange scleronepthia soft corals dominating Komodo. But I was blown away by how beautiful the hard coral growth was. And I think, particularly as around the world, hard corals have suffered so much, when you go somewhere where hard corals are just growing like weeds everywhere, it's really uplifting. And I love that about Komodo. Flores offers some really diverse diving as you travel across it. Everything from full-on muck dives to offshore islands and nice reefs. But you definitely feel the hand of fishing there. It's most people just go and go, oh, isn't it beautiful and pretty? It's so pristine. But if you actually look, you go, well, actually, there's not a lot of stuff that's bigger than this sort of size. But it was still really enjoyable. And then we went on to Alor. Sorry, you asked a question.
Well, so obviously I love marine life, but I also love reptiles. Did you guys do the dragons at all?
Oh yeah. I'll have to stick a video in. I didn't want to go and do the big tourist on the island, on Komodo Island dragon thing. And one of the attractions of going down to South Rincha is that the beach there has dragons on it. And so you get the chance to, we didn't go on land there. I'm not sure you're allowed to with the national park laws. But we went right up into the shallows on the Zodiacs. So it was kind of like being on land. We were just in waist deep water, but on the Zodiacs, and we're able to shoot the dragons on the beach. And we were the only people there, so it felt a really nice natural experience. And they are proper business. They are big. they are full of attitude. They act like they're the kings of the land that they live on. And I think that attitude of, they're not hiding away from anyone. They're just like, I'm the boss, I'm out. And I'm not going to bother going anywhere, So, and they're quite quick when they want to be, and they properly lived up to the billing, and it was everyone. The crew also loved it as well, and I think a lot of the crew had never really got to see them up close as well because they don't go on the land trip, and so I think they were more excited than the guests. But the guests, we all really loved it. If I've got any video clips of it, I'll drop a few in of the dragons. I didn't shoot any video with my camera, but maybe I've got a couple of stills I can drop in.
Cool.
And then the final part of the trip, we went to Alor, which I would say from a kind of geological oceanographic setup is possibly the most naturally endowed place I've been for amazing diving. And I'll explain that in that the main attraction is the channel that runs between the islands. And, a lot of the islands, they're like Komodo. You've got a long string of islands, and then in the gaps in between the islands, you've got the channels. The channel at Alor is much deeper than the others. So you've got proper deep water running up through this channel, and then you've got these 3 quite medium-sized islands, which are high islands in the channel. At the bottom of Alor area, you've got very cold water, and at the top you've got very warm water. And you're talking about, at the top it was fine to dive in a rash vest. In the south, I was wearing a full 5mm suit and a 5mm shorty with hood over the top. And I was fine like that. but I wouldn't have wanted to be wearing anything less.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's, real varying conditions. And then off the side of this channel in Alor, you've got this big long bay, which is also, because there's quite big tides, has got quite strong tidal movement. And as you'll know from diving in Florida, anywhere where you've got sheltered water and lots of water movement, it's amazing for marine life.
Yeah.
Add to that the fact you've got this contrast between very warm water, very cold water, even more so, and then add to that not only is this channel protected, but it's also deep. It is just a hugely exciting area of the ocean.
Do you notice a difference in the actual marine life between the north and the south?
Oh yeah. There's definitely some species that are specialists in both areas. There are what things in the cold water like the sea apples and particularly the yellow sea cucumbers that are very specific to that area. The cold water in Alor is famous for bringing rhinopius up to nice depths.
Did you get any?
No, unfortunately on our trip we didn't see any rhinopius. We went to all the places where they were being seeing them, and then just because we were on liveaboard and also when we were there, because it was a long trip, it was a 2-week trip, I did 47 dives. We had to have big tides at some point during the trip. So I chose when planning the trip to have small tides in Komodo, but it meant by the time we got to Alor, we were there on the spring tides. And that limited us quite a lot on dive sites, especially because they have a booking system there. There's only so many sites that you can do at certain times of the tides when you've got such big tides. And so we were a bit restricted on the dive sites, a little bit in Alor. I think what was really great about Alor is that the reefs were in really good condition. The corals were beautiful. The visibility was fantastic everywhere there. Really nice visibility. Even in the cold water was really, whereas in Bali, in Komodo, in Rincha, when you go in the cold water, it's normally green and murky.
Yeah.
Whereas in Alor, the cold water was cold, but really clear. And I don't really understand why. But maybe just because of the deep water there's not as much upwelling, strangely, because the water's not forced up. And as a result, you don't get the bloom when it comes up because it's not up. The currents running through the strait were just incredible at times. Properly, we can't move the boat now because we can't physically go fast enough to get through there. But I think the only disappointment I had with Alor is that it felt like Flores heavily fished. And it's not industrial fishing. It's, artisanal local fishing. They don't use destructive methods in Alor. They use fish traps. But it does just clean out all the big fish. And it's cool seeing the bamboo fish traps on the reef, and it's part of the story. But yeah, you really notice, the impact of, Indonesia's, I think, the third most populous country in the world. And, those people have to eat protein from somewhere, and you see that effect on the reef. So I think if I could have visited Indonesia, 1,000 years ago, Alor is where I would probably want to have gone diving. But these days, it's still fantastic to visit, and I would definitely be going back there. But it feels like you're not seeing it at its peak. Whereas when you go to Raja Ampat, you do feel that it's maintained that you're seeing it very close to that pristine level, which is why Raja for me is still tops.
Is that just because you think Raja has all those protections in place that keep it from?
I think it was remote enough until recently. When I first went to Raja 20 years ago, there was no one anywhere there. And now you go back there and every island's got a little homestay and a little shack and people are living there. And, when we first went there, the whole place was empty. It really was. Like there was just no one, and the population has spread through the region as there's been opportunities and things. And whereas Alor, all these islands have got, had long-standing villages and people who live there for a long time. And, I'm no issue with people fishing. But I'm just saying you see it as in the water. So but you do have all the pelagics there. We'd see mola mola, we'd see mantas from the surface. There were big pods of dolphins there. I'm not going to rain on your parade by going on about them, but it was there's cetaceans migrate through there. They've had a lot of blue whales come through that gap this year. So they had a saltwater crocodile the day before we got there. Thankfully, we didn't meet him. But yeah, it's a really awesome area, and I definitely will go back there. So yeah, that's really cool. The other thing we need to catch up on is not only were you out diving, but just before that, you were talking to the South Florida Underwater Photo Society,
Yeah.
which
Uh,
was I think it was your first time speaking to them, wasn't it?
it's my first time speaking to anybody really. I've never done a presentation like that, so I'm not a great well, I think I'm not a great public speaker. I was very nervous ahead of time, and everyone's like, "Oh, you'll do fine, you'll do fine." And
There's a lot of big hitters there as well.
yeah, it
There's,
was.
it's
I got to
a
meet some
tough
people I've
audience.
followed on Instagram forever and never actually met, so that was cool. And I had friends there. Um, my best friend's sitting in the front row. Ariana was sitting in the front row, so it was helpful to have them sitting right there, and I could just look over at them if I ever got nervous. But it ended up going really, really well. I managed to make everybody laugh with the first thing I said, and I kind of relaxed me. But I gave a talk on like Florida's freshwater ecosystems and how everybody comes to Florida, and you go to the bridge, you go for sharks, you go to the Keys, the reefs, all that kind of stuff. And if anybody ever goes to freshwater stuff, it's always for manatees. And I love manatees as much as the next person, but there's so much more here than just manatees.
Mm.
And while I was researching for this talk, I found Florida has 340 something freshwater fish species, which
Oh,
is way
wow.
more than I would have thought. Um, and I've seen maybe 30, so there's a lot more to see. Then I talked about gar and alligators, and the alligators for sure got the biggest reaction.
Mm.
I cautioned people that while it's a very cool experience, I don't recommend doing it. Um, but
I mean, the people can watch the stories in the How I Got the Shots episode. Yeah.
yeah. So I told that story again, and
Mm.
but it went really well. Everybody. I got a lot of questions, which was cool. I tried to turn it into more of a discussion than just a lecture because I'm not a good monologuer. And then I talked through, certain techniques and lighting and all that kind of stuff as well. But I really just kind of hammered home that if you want unique pictures from Florida, freshwater is where you're going to get them far more than the ocean,
Mm.
um, because so fewer people are doing that. Then everybody and their mother goes to the bridge, everybody and their mother goes and does sharks, and I love all of that. But from an imaging perspective, I think the freshwater stuff is much more unusual, and your images will stand out more from
And
here.
just it broadens your portfolio, being able to do both as well.
And
It,
the other thing I said is like we live here. You have that advantage is you have time to go explore those places and really get some unique stuff that people traveling through usually don't get.
mm,
So I encourage people to go, test the freshwaters and just keep an eye out for alligators. And went really well, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback. And I think the next time I give a talk, hopefully I'll be a little less nervous ahead of time.
well,
Uh,
you should get out and give this one. Now you've done the hard work. It's like volunteer it. Like go and give it at some big shows. Like see put a pitch in to Sea Rovers up in Boston.
yeah,
And because you've done the hard work of putting it together, and give more people the chance to see it.
and that would make me nervous doing it at Sea
Yeah,
Rover.
but then, that's the only way you get over it is to get out and do them. So
Yeah, of course, that's true.
I
Um,
used to hate speaking, like you, really hate it, really hate it. Even like after my PhD, I would still have to read every talk I gave,
yeah,
and I realized that it was just not compatible with what I was doing in life.
yeah,
Both as a scientist and as a photographer, I needed to be able to speak. And while I'm no naturally gifted public speaker, I just forced myself to volunteer. Just for a couple of years, I just volunteered and agreed to everything I was asked to do, and
yeah,
was giving a talk at least once a month for a couple of years, and for camera clubs and nature clubs and photography, underwater photography and dive clubs and all those things, and it just got me so used to it, and now and it just makes it it means you don't feel it too much.
yeah. I,
It's fine to be a bit nervous before you go on stage, but yeah.
yeah. I did one for like the California Underwater Photo Society a while ago, but that was virtual. The in person is so much better. Uh,
Yeah.
because when you're doing it virtually, it feels like you're just talking to you're talking at yourself because you're looking at yourself on the screen. And doing it in front of people, you can get like real time feedback, and people can ask questions, and you can see reactions and hear reactions, which is probably the best part about it. And it was really cool. I pulled up the picture of my friend Josh with the alligator,
Yeah.
and that got a reaction from people because I showed the first picture I showed is the alligator, which is a cool picture, but there's nothing for scale. And I'm like, yeah, this thing was like 11 or 12 feet, and then nobody really reacted to that. And then you pull up the picture of Josh with it, and everybody's like, oh shit. So that was a cool moment. But yeah, it went really well, and I appreciated all the feedback I've gotten since, and everybody was very supportive and congratulatory. So, and a lot of people seemed to get something out of it. So
what
we'll
sort
see
of audience did you get there?
So before I went up, I counted like 40 something people. I don't know. It was probably in the 40 50 range.
When SFUPS do their in-person talks, they don't broadcast them, do they? You have to turn up to see it.
You have to be a member to see them.
Yeah. It's cool though. It's we on the same night actually, but obviously a few hours earlier because of the time difference. We had one of the few in-person meetings we have in the UK for underwater photography. And a mutual friend of ours, Nick Moore, was giving a talk on macro. But it's a special meeting of the British Society of Underwater Photographers. We have a special evening called the Martin Edge Lecture. And it was an idea that I had as a great way of honouring Martin. It started a few years ago while Martin was still alive. And the aim of it is just to ask a leading light in our society to give a really well-researched and original talk, not just turn up and give the talk they've done loads of times. To the audience on a pertinent subject in underwater photography. And Nick was a prominent member, and he talked about macro, particularly macro in Lembe, and dealing, just shooting in that area. And the aim is to be a bit provocative, a bit thought-provoking, not just say, this is the classic way of doing it, to try and encourage people. And I think Nick enjoyed sort of blasting the marble and reflective background brigade and the snoot addicted and a colourful torch on the background shots, which apparently are creative, even though you've given it no thought as to why you're doing it or what, whether it suits the subject matter or not. And that went down brilliantly well, and the photos you showed were really stunning. But we did that as a hybrid meeting, so I think there was about 35 of us were in London for the talk, and then there was about another 30 or so watching online.
I wish and I don't know how BSoup does it, but I wish they would, the SFUPS, I wish SFUPS would do like either a live stream of it or allow like non-members to watch them. And I understand like if they want you to sign up if you want to watch it, but I think it would reach a much greater audience, and people might also be more inclined to join if they were able to see the talks that are being given, and then be a part of it. But
yeah, I mean, what I often do if I'm giving a talk like that, and I know it's like a one-off, I'm not going to do it again anywhere, because I generally don't enjoy doing the same talk again. I like to do a different talk each time.
Yeah.
And what I do is I take my phone along and I just stick the sound recorder on, and then I'll just put the sound recorder on a video thing and just lay the slides on top of it and stick it up on YouTube.
That's a good idea.
And that way, like, the effort doesn't get wasted. It's the effort. And even if you put it up 6 months later, it's kind of a good way of recording it. I don't listen back to it myself, particularly with a live talk. The last thing I want to do, but it's nice not just to be able to share it in the future.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because we're a little preview of another episode we're having coming up about shark diving. But you mentioned you heard me on another podcast, and I never listened to myself on podcasts like talk. I just can't.
I listened to the whole thing, like beginning to end.
So then I went back
Wildlife Photography podcast.
Yeah, I went back and listened to it, and I actually was not as put off by my own speaking as I normally am, and I managed to make it through the whole thing, because oftentimes I'll get through the first 10 minutes of me talking, I'm like, nah, I'm out. Well,
we have been catching up now for more than 10 minutes. I think it's coming up to about half an hour. So I guess we should say to everyone, thank you for watching the Underwater Photography Show, and I hope we'll see you on here again very soon.